Hi, I'm Helen and I'm a homeopath. I've been in practice for 30 years now, and I'm teaching a new class on homeopathy for beginners on Tuesday nights. And we met for the first time last Tuesday. It's now the 28th of July, so it was this Tuesday just gone. Some people weren't able to make it, so I am recording the presentation that I gave then, and I'm also going to post it to YouTube so that anybody else who wants to watch it and wants to learn more about homeopathy can do so. And then you can feel free to contact me if you have any questions, and if you'd like to join our Tuesday class. It's at 7 p.m. London time every other Tuesday. So the next class is going to be on Tuesday, August 9th. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen so that you can see my PowerPoint. And I am starting with a slide that hopefully you can see now, which says, homeopathy, what is it and how does it work? We're going to start with, there are hundreds, thousands probably, must be thousands of books on homeopathy, but we're going to start with the most essential book on homeopathy that you will ever read, by Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. And this is the most recent edition, 1996. It has been annotated and edited by a woman named Wenda Brewster O'Reilly, PhD, and she's done a fabulous job. Now, the reason we need to read the organon, the word is the clue. It means instrument, tool, or organ in Greek, and it is the tool that you need to be a successful homeopath and do homeopathy right. There are lots of ways of doing homeopathy. Like any other subject, there's a lot of disagreement about how to do homeopathy, but I'm going to try and stick with the facts. So what is it? And how does it work? Homeopathy is a complete system of medicine founded over 200 years ago by Samuel Hahnemann. He was born in 1755 in Germany, and he died in 1843 in Paris. At the time of his death, he had a thriving medical practice solely using homeopathic medicine, together with his wife, his second wife, Melanie Hahnemann. And he was not only a medical doctor, he was a linguist, he spoke multiple languages, he was a chemist, he was a historian of medicine, so he knew a lot about the history of medicine up to his time. And of course, he knew about the contemporary medicine of his time, and homeopathy was his riposte to the failures of the medicine of his time. And the fact that it's lasted for over 200 years and is practiced all around the world, and famously used by the royal family in the UK, among many other celebrities, is testament to its efficacy, its safety, its non-toxicity, and why you really want to know about it. He was also, of course, a scientific revolutionary. So he wrote the Organon of the Medical Art. Editions 1 through 6 were published during his lifetime, and I mentioned this 1996 edition by Brewster O'Reilly, which is the one you should try and get hold of, and the one that I'm going to be quoting from. So Hahnemann addresses 3 types of medicine in the Organon: homeopathic, antipathic, and allopathic medical treatment. Homeopathic means treating like with like. It's according to the law of similars, which says that something that can bring about symptoms of illness could also cure similar symptoms in an ill person. Antipathic medicine would be using opposites, and allopathic medicine would be using anything that appears to work, which may in fact not be curing the patient, but it may be making them even more ill than they were. Admittedly, perhaps the symptoms they came in with have gone, but they may be more seriously ill on a deeper level as a result, as a direct result of the medical treatment that they have received. And that is obviously not something anybody would want. A quote from the Organon, paragraph 52. The homeopathic mode bases all that it does on the exact observation of nature, careful experiments on healthy human volunteers, and on pure experience. So those are the three pillars: exact observation of nature, careful experiments on healthy human volunteers, and pure experience. So that would be great, wouldn't it, if all medicine was based on experiments on healthy human volunteers. The homeopathic procedural mode, by means of which a medicine is used for the totality of symptoms of a natural disease, a medicine capable of engendering the most similar symptoms possible in healthy people. I know it's a bit wordy, it's a bit old-fashioned, but just break it down and it's really quite simple. He is saying here that the right medicine will be for the totality of symptoms, not just for the headache, not just for the sore throat, not just for the aches and pains, but for the totality of symptoms of that person, which is why a homeopath takes a very careful case history and wants to know all kinds of apparently irrelevant things about you before prescribing a remedy for the totality of symptoms. And this is a medicine that is capable of engendering in a healthy person the most similar symptoms possible. So that's what I said about like cures like, using similars to cure diseases. If you were in class, we would have a discussion now, and we did on Tuesday. So it is good to be able to ask questions, but for this recording, I'm just going to go through, and you can ask questions in comments, or you can send me an email. So when given in suitable dosage, as small as possible, the dosage should be as small as possible. It is the only helpful curative mode whereby diseases which are solely dynamic are extinguished by the homeopathic medicine. Again, there's a lot there in just one sentence, but I've highlighted, or I think I've put it in bold, the things that are really important in homeopathy. So the first one in this sentence is the suitable dosage, and that being as small as possible. So you've probably heard that homeopathic medicines are so diluted that there isn't even a single molecule left in them of the original substance from which they are derived. So that is because they operate on a dynamic, energetic level, not on a material level. So Hahnemann emphasizes in this sentence diseases which are solely dynamic. He is saying that all diseases are actually dynamic, not material, i.e. they originate in the energy on a dynamic level. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. We've got to say a bit more about this, haven't we? Diseases are solely dynamic. Hahnemann believed that illnesses are not caused by material causes, but they're caused by energetic, dynamic causes. They are also cured by energetic and dynamic medicines, such as homeopathic remedies, because homeopathic remedies are diluted in accordance with a serial dilution. Either you'll see a number after a homeopathic remedy, maybe it's 30C, so that means it's C series, centesimal series, and that means that the substance has been diluted by 100, and then so on, by 100 again, by 100 again. 1 part in 99 parts is the actual original substance. This can also be done in a decimal series, i.e. X. You'll realize by now that these letters correspond to Roman numerals. So C being 100, X being 10, and M being 1,000, and so on. We're going to talk a lot more about potency in future classes, but just bear in mind that that's what those little letters after the numbers, after the name of the remedy, are referring to. So remedies are not just diluted, they are succussed, which means they're shaken vigorously. So actually they're shaken and they're bashed like this. This shaking and this succussion releases the energetic content of the substance into the water in which it is diluted. It may not be water, but let's stick with water for now. The dilution and succussion enables a tiny amount of the original substance to be activated for use as a dynamic homeopathic remedy. And as the amount is so tiny, it's also safe. The patient will only react to the remedy if there is a need for it, a susceptibility to it. Otherwise, it's such a tiny, minuscule amount, it's not going to make any difference. This is why it's really important to get the remedy right, of course. So what are some of the things homeopathic remedies are made of? We're going to look at 6 new remedies per class. And the first 3 for tonight's class are these ones that hopefully you can see here. These illustrations are done by Meta Mitchell, and she has given various homeopaths permission to share her beautiful, informative cards. So let's look at the first one, Apis, honeybee poison. So in the Apis picture is how homeopaths would describe it. In the picture of Apis, you've got insect bites, allergies, hay fever, swollen tonsils, cystitis, styes, and hives, among other symptoms. These are the keynotes. These are the main symptoms. But all of these symptoms don't all have to be present, but any of these symptoms that are present, and you're thinking of prescribing Apis, they would be characterized by these bullet points below, by inflammation, by the affected area being painful on touch, by edematous swellings, so like water-filled swellings, like if you get swollen ankles and they're like just all puffy and swollen, it's usually edematous swelling. And also they're aggravated by heat. So these are the characteristics of Apis. And in the class on Tuesday, one of the people who came along to the class had used Apis 200 very effectively on numerous occasions for insect stings. Okay, let's move on to the next remedy, which is arnica. This is the remedy of which most people have heard. A lot of people who know nothing about homeopathy may well have heard about arnica or used arnica. It's derived from a leopard's bane, a flower. Mountain daisy is another common name for it. And it's used for injury, trauma, physical exhaustion, bruises, operations, jet lag, birth, which can be traumatic. It's used for all types of injuries, shock after injury. It's great to take after surgeries and operations. As I said, used after any type of birth, throughout labor and birth and afterwards. And also used for minor trauma, as in jet lag, dental extractions. I reminded one of my best friends last week, she had a very protracted and painful dental extraction. Have you taken your arnica? Oh, yes, I must remember to take my arnica. And it helps, it really helps the healing process to proceed more quickly and less painfully. Okay, and the last remedy on this slide, arsenicum, white oxide of arsenic. That sounds poisonous, I hear some of you say. Indeed, the crude substance is poisonous. And you'll note it can be used for food poisoning. So a great example of like cures like. Remember, it's prepared in such a way that it is in no way toxic. It is in no way harmful. So when it's prepared as a homeopathic remedy, it can be used for food poisoning, diarrhea, fear, restlessness, feeling neurotic, asthma, and burning pain, among other symptoms. The arsenicum patient, the arsenicum picture, feels extremely ill. They don't want to be left alone. They want somebody with them. Everything has to be done in a certain way. They are controlling, and they drink small sips and prefer something warm. They feel cold. They might be shivery and saying, I'm really cold, but my pains are burning. So that is your picture of arsenicum, a very, very useful remedy. Now, just to remind you, all homeopathic remedies are proved on healthy human volunteers. That's how we know what they're good for. The volunteers take them, record all the symptoms, and homeopaths compile this information and have done for hundreds of years. So we've got an incredible amount of data on a vast thousands and thousands of substances, which we can consult when determining the best remedy for a patient who comes to see us. So as it says here, homeopathic remedies are made from animals, minerals, plants. You just saw an example of an animal remedy, apis, a mineral remedy, arsenicum, and a plant remedy, arnica. But they can also be made from what we call imponderables, things like moonlight, luna is a remedy. Sunlight, sol is a remedy. Somebody has even done a proving of the light of Venus. What else? There are gems. Gems are made into remedies. All kinds of substances, the body's own substances, testosterone, cortisone, adrenaline, all kinds of bodily substances get out of balance, and the homeopathic version of that substance may well be what the patient needs to get the body back into balance. As you saw with arsenicum, poisonous substances, toxic substances can be prepared in a safe form as a homeopathic remedy and may be used for conditions that have been brought on by exposure to a toxin like I don't know, formaldehyde in paint, anything where an environmental toxin has caused an illness, somebody has never felt well since being exposed to something, that could be made into a homeopathic remedy. Medications, a lot of people suffer ill effects from HRT, the contraceptive pill, all kinds of medications, antibiotics. Those can be made into a homeopathic remedy, and that may be the remedy that somebody needs. Okay, our next 3 remedies, we're doing 6 remedies per class, and I want you to learn these remedies before the next class. So it's going to be good to have the recording, because you can look back, you can look at the cards, you can look at the notes, you can make your own notes, do this the old-fashioned way, actually study. You're not going to learn homeopathy without studying. Somebody asked me in the group today, we have a WhatsApp group, well, can you rely on your intuition? Yes, if you're an experienced homeopath. But first, you have to learn the facts. You have to learn the principles and philosophy behind homeopathy. You have to learn the materia medica, which is what we're doing now, learning the remedies. You have to learn how to find the remedy. And to do that, you'll use a repertory. And then you can start to rely on your intuition once you've got the facts down, because homeopathy is both a science and an art. So belladonna, deadly nightshade, childhood fevers, inflammation, ear and throat infections, swollen glands. If a child, it's a very common childhood remedy, is in a belladonna state, they are burning, red, hot, and dry. They have swellings that are painful, and it's a throbbing pain. Not just children. As an adult, you might get a belladonna headache, and it is going to be throbbing. It's a throbbing pain. Symptoms come on suddenly. The pupils may be dilated, really black eyes, no or little thirst, and often craving for lemons and lemonade. I'm going to contrast it with the next remedy, also a plant remedy, Bryonia. They both begin with B. They have some similarities, but Bryonia comes on really slowly. You may be thinking for a couple of days, I'm not feeling too good. I'm really tired. I don't know what's wrong with me, before you actually test positive, because yes, it has been used for that very, very successfully. So Bryonia is wild hops. Symptoms include a dry cough, influenza, fever, headache, joint pain, and pain is worse from movement. They just want to lie still. The slightest movement aggravates their symptoms. There's a terrible dryness, a thirst, dry in the mouth, dry lips, great thirst for cold water. The onset of symptoms comes slowly, as I mentioned. They want peace and quiet and to be alone, unlike arsenicum, who doesn't want to be alone. The pain is characterized as a stabbing pain. Ooh, there's 2 magpies outside leaping around in the trees. So belladonna and bryonia and arsenicum, they're all really useful remedies. The 6th remedy for today, the last remedy for today, actually I'm lying, because we are going to do a case, and the case study is another remedy. So it's going to be 7 remedies tonight. But the last remedy on this slide is calc carb, and that is derived from the inside of an oyster shell. And symptoms include coughing, colds, headaches, teething, children who have trouble with teething, cradle cap in babies and infants, recurrent ailments, often in children, but also adults. The disease or ailment moves very slowly in calc carb, as with bryonia. They have a large appetite, especially for dairy food and eggs. They tend to be sweaty around the head and the neck. The sweat and the stool have a sour smell. They're chilly and they're constantly worrying. They're real warriors, these people who are just worried about everything. Calc carb is often regarded as being the chronic remedy of belladonna. So if belladonna is the remedy for an acute situation, like a fever, teething, in the acute stage where, you know, the child is up at night, can't sleep because of the pain, you give belladonna, they get better. So they're perfectly well, but in their more chronic or constitutional state, they have some of the calc carb symptoms, then you might want to give that as a constitutional remedy. Okay, so I'm also going to mention, this is going to be the 8th remedy I'm mentioning tonight. Okay, well, a newly proven remedy. So remember I said that new remedies are being proved all the time. New substances are being proven all the time. So back in the autumn of last year, I was involved with a group of homeopaths in proving the remedy Lichen. Amazingly, Lichen isn't a well-known or well-used remedy, but it is promising to be quite a significant remedy for our times. Lichen is a really interesting organism. It's a composite organism. It's not a plant and it's not a fungi, but it's kind of somewhere in between. And lichens have properties different from those of their component organisms. And as you all know, you've seen them, they come in many sizes and colors and forms. They're sometimes plant-like, but they're not plants. So I just wanted to drop this in to the class, the idea of being involved in provings, because I've always found it to be a really worthwhile experiential learning experience, because otherwise homeopathy can be a bit academic and a bit mental, and there's an awful lot of studying involved. So it's great when you can actually get into this kind of alchemical experience of homeopathy by being involved in a proving. And I am going to be supervising a new proving in the autumn, and I'll talk more about that another time. So, okay, recapping on something I said earlier, a homeopathic remedy is chosen for the totality of symptoms. The homeopathic mode bases all that it does on the exact observation of nature, careful experiments on healthy human volunteers, and pure experience. I think it's worth repeating this because these are really important principles, and they are true throughout homeopathy. And the bit about healthy human volunteers, we don't test any remedies on animals, and any animal substances that are used in homeopathic remedies, it's only extracted once, and then any number of remedies can be made from a minuscule amount of, for example, bee sting, as in the case of apis. So it doesn't, you don't need cages and cages full of rabbits in a lab. You keep testing over and over again until they're kind of tortured to death. No, you only make the remedy once, and that's enough. And no animals are ever used in the testing of remedies. So to finish off this first class, we are going to look at a case, one of my cases, as hopefully an illustration of which are the most important symptoms, because we say take the totality of symptoms, But that means a representative totality of symptoms, the most important symptoms. And determining which are the most important symptoms is part of the skill and knowledge of learning homeopathy, but I hope this will be illustrative. So this is the case of a 78-year-old man, and I shall call him S, and he did give me written permission to share his case. It has been published in the Journal of the Society of Homeopaths in the UK. That journal is called New Homeopath. And if you'd like a PDF of the whole case, I could send it to you. So the presenting symptoms of S included depression, fear of being smothered, claustrophobia, sleep apnea, dreams of being closed in or unable to breathe, waking in extreme terror, seeing ghosts, erectile dysfunction. He was stressed out by his relationship with his adult son, who had complex chronic health issues and lived at home with his parents. S complained of physical weakness, lumps and bumps, small indurated glands around the ears, fear of illness. Specifically, he was very fearful of suffering a recurrence of the bacterial meningitis he had suffered in the winter before he came to see me. He came to see me in the summer. So his recent history of bacterial meningitis was preceded by temporary paralysis and mental blackouts. So from mid-December 2018 to mid-March 2019, he had first temporary paralysis, mental blackouts, and bacterial meningitis, for which he was hospitalized a couple of times, given a lot of antibiotics, and recovered from. But he was left with certain symptoms, which included the ones I listed in the first bullet point, and also urinary incontinence, constipation, feeling angry and impatient, mental fuzziness, as he described it, physical weakness, memory loss, and occasional attacks of hemiplegic one-sided migraine that manifested as numbness and renewed temporary paralysis of the arm and leg on one side of the body. I can't remember which side, which is really bad actually, because in homeopathy it can be very relevant what side the symptoms are on. Anyway, we'll have to go on. So he had no interest in exercise, although he knew he needed to exercise. All he wanted to do really was sit in an armchair and read about astrology. And he characterized his recent experiences as Plutonian. He loved sweet things, he loved thunderstorms, he was feeling a lot of grief, and he was crying a lot. So he came to see me to begin constitutional homeopathic treatment. I gave him his first remedy, and he said, okay, I'm going to exercise as well. I'm going to take this remedy. And he started going to exercise classes 5 days a week. At the follow-up appointment, which was about 4 weeks later, he reported that he decided it was going to be important to go away more just with his wife, so that they would make arrangements for care of their adult son, and they would go away for weekends. And they'd already been away for a weekend, and he said that his relationship with both his wife and his son, and even his deceased father, had improved, because he'd been talking about seeing ghosts, one of whom was his deceased father, who'd been giving him a hard time, but apparently his relationship with him improved. So I repeated the remedy because it seemed to be doing something good. Something good was happening. At the second follow-up, S looked relaxed, and when I asked him, he said, He had little anxiety, if any. The lymph nodes were less swollen. He was still exercising 5 days a week, which was pretty impressive. And they were planning an extended trip to Mexico, just he and his wife. Where am I? Oh yeah, so the improvements seemed to be ongoing, so I did not repeat the remedy. He'd just had 2 doses and he was doing well. They went away the following winter to Mexico for a couple of months, but the trip was cut short because of COVID. They returned earlier because it was January 2020 and they were getting a bit worried. But anyway, while they were away, he was taking a class and he was due to do a presentation in the class when he experienced the beginnings of another attack of right-sided hemiplegic migraine while he was waiting to make this presentation in the class. Luckily, it didn't progress to the paralysis stage and he had the remedy with him and he took another dose and he was fine after that. He didn't have any recurrence of those symptoms. So the remedy, I should probably have put this on the next slide so it would have been a big reveal. The remedy was argentum nitricum, which is nitrate of silver. And here I have quoted George Vithulkas, who is one of the best known, best loved homeopaths. He is 90, I think he just turned 90. So he says, arginate, in its action on the brain and spine, furnishes us with a list of symptoms that lead to the use of the remedy in many forms of nervous disease, from simple nervous debility to full-fledged locomotor ataxia or paralysis. He also points out that it is useful in functional paralysis that follows severe acute diseases. So when I read that, I realized, okay, that's exactly what he had. He'd had the severe acute meningitis, after which he had functional paralysis. So it really fit the whole picture. And I go into it in a lot more detail in the case that I wrote up. So if anybody wants to read that, it's available. So here's the little card about arginate, silver nitrate, stage fright, fear of exams, anticipatory anxiety, craves sugar, and S craved sweet things, and salt, claustrophobia, he had claustrophobia, diarrhea from anxiety, anxiety getting worse as the event comes close, hurried and hurries others, headache from expectations, nausea and bad stomach from sugar. So on the left, I have symptoms from the repertory. Now, there are several repertories, physical book versions, computerized repertories, all kinds of repertories. So that is a big subject and several classes. I'll be talking about repertories in several classes. But for now, these are the symptoms that I used to confirm that for the totality of symptoms, in this case, arginate was the right remedy. So you can see that there are symptoms that are to do with what is called mind in homeopathic remedies, homeopathic repertories, which includes anxiety, delusions, dreams. Those are all under mind. And in this case, there were a number of delusions, such as imaginations that they saw dead people, imaginations that they were about to die, imaginations that they have been repudiated by their relatives. So there were a number of remedies, a number of symptoms that confirmed the remedy. But if you see the number in brackets afterwards, that indicates how many other remedies also have this symptom. So, for example, delusions, imaginations, is about to die. There are 100 remedies in that rubric. So that's not particularly helpful because it could be 1 out of 100 remedies. But when you combine it with the other symptoms here, it helps to confirm that arginate was the right remedy, especially when you also look at the physical ones. So the head, the inflammation of the meninges, in other words, meningitis. If you also add the erections wanting, the impotency in old people, and the general symptom of hemiplegia, paralysis on one side of the body. Well, I hope that that case was helpful and didn't raise more questions than it answered, but hopefully it was interesting and helpful. So I'm kind of wrapping up now, and I just want to say that one of the things I love about homeopathy is that it recognizes our connection with the universe, with everything on earth, because everything on earth can be made into a homeopathic remedy. And so which one do you need? And I love this quote by D.H. Lawrence. The cosmos is a vast living body of which we are still parts. We are still parts of the cosmos, we're still parts of the earth, and homeopathy is just such a wonderful, wonderful healing modality, a healing art and science that I hope you will experience it and that you will learn about it and that you will share it with other people. So here are some of the things that are to come in future classes. We'll be talking about the hierarchy of symptoms, which is something that was developed by homeopaths in the past to guide us in which are the most important symptoms in a case. I won't say more than that today. More materia medica always. The direction of cure, that is really helpful as well. This is another principle of homeopathy, more materia medica. The repertories, that's a big subject. We'll be covering that in coming classes. Potencies and dosage, also a huge subject that we'll be covering. Provings, homeopathy for pregnancy, childbirth, for children, for menopause, for all kinds of specific situations. So there's loads to learn, and I really hope that you will join me with the group for some more classes. I'll be recording the classes live from now on, and I'll be posting them on my channel. So thanks very much for coming and watching, and I hope to see you soon.